I have staff that are literally from all over the country.
Yes.
I probably have at least a third of the staff that are true Northerners, born, raised, went to school in the system, whether directly here or another place in the North. I have another third that have only ever taught in the Northwest Territories. Their whole teaching career has been here. And then I got probably another third. They're, like I said, from that very diverse area across the country, and they bring their expertise here. So honestly, I know navigating these two systems as once is stressful for certainly the staff.
When you think about longevity in education, you get a couple different perspectives. On the one hand, people are often quick to say, it's a good thing to have turnover. And I know lots of school districts that have policies that, don't have positions, whether it's district level positions that last more than 5 years, for example. Again, it's not hard to see the logic behind that, get fresh people in there and kind of all that stuff. And yet, when we talk about things like building culture and some of these more long-standing values, they take time. And it seems rare in education to have somebody in a position for more than, say, leadership positions for more than 5-10 years. But in this case, today I have a great conversation with Dean McInnis, who has been the principal in the largest high school in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, for over 10 years, as well as before that serving as assistant principal. And as you hear this conversation, there's no doubt that this is such a big part of who he is and the feel you get of Sir John Franklin High School. So that's a really great part of this conversation. And the second thing we talk about is his role as the president of CAPS, the Canadian Association of Principals, who have an upcoming conference this spring in Regina, where there'll be a lot of great speakers there, including former guests of this show, Alec Koros and Katie White. And anyway, I'd known Dean, again, through a number of channels, but not really a conversation. So it's always kind of nice. And then you find out you have all these other things in common, like the first guest ever with the same name as mine. So that's, for whatever that's worth, it just is a little bit of fun to have somebody else named Dean. Enjoy the two Dean conversation today with Dean McInnis.
So I'm excited because I've never had anybody on my podcast also named Dean. So that's fun. It's actually interesting because my wife is really into, she loves names and that whole thing and studies it. And of course, tells me about the rise of the name. Actually, it's had a bit of a rise. I don't know if you know that of late somehow, but I don't run across very many Deans. So welcome, Dean.
No, neither do I have to say. But my wife reminds me of what Dean means. I think I'm a leader or the boss or the head of something. And then laughs.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's true. That's true. I get that too. I get that once in a while. Of course, as we came on the air here and you and I were just chatting, I noticed that behind me, there's sunshine and behind you, there's darkness. We live one time zone apart, so that maybe is true. But tell us about where you are today and why is it dark outside?
I live in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, which is the capital of the territory. I've been lucky enough to live here for 34 years. And at this time of the year, which is January, it's dark. It's dark for about 20 hours a day. It is just 9:30 in the morning, so we won't see the sunlight for probably another half hour, maybe 45 minutes. And we'll see it till about 2 in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it's back to being dark because it's the winter. We're the north.
Right. And of course, would also tell me that in the summertime, the opposite is true. So 34 years into it, and, I was asking you about, are there some just rituals or routines that the community has and that but what have you in your own personal world, how do you have got to, because you're not staying there for 34 years because you have to, now it's home, right?
Yep.
So you've come to embrace this kind of very strange climate that you live in. So just tell me a little bit about, how you navigate that and make it work for you.
Certainly, I would say, and it's something too that as we hire new people who move to our community, it's something that's very much at the forefront. It's if you're going to be in this northern community and it's with darkness and a little bit of cold weather and the opposite, the sunshine, you have to have your activity, your passion, your thing outside of work. So having something that you're connected to, if you're into Music, there are multiple choirs you can join in our community. If you're athletic, there's volleyball and badminton and hockey, and there's different levels even within those activities. There's all kinds of cultural things that happen in our community. Having your activity, your thing that recharges you away from the workplace, and even, obviously having support from family, which sometimes can be challenging here. It's tough. You really need to have family, friends, activities to navigate it, because December and January, as we just mentioned, is a little bit dark. You can always dress warm. You can always warm up your car for a half an hour. But in order to not get into a funk, you need to have your thing, whatever it is, whether it's, like I said, pottery or athletics or fine arts, something that just keeps you balanced.
So what's your thing?
My thing, honestly, I'm a hockey guy. If you notice over my other shoulder, I love hockey. It's been a part of my life since I've been 4. Play it, but also watching it. I'm very invested in my team, but also just hockey generally. Even from young kids who are in our community who get to play down south, I follow them. Whether I'm watching it online myself, whether I'm following it on Twitter or X or whatever it may be, getting updates and connecting with their families, that's something that kind of keeps me balanced, because it's in my role as a principal, you easily can fall into working all the time, especially in a community my size.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah, 100%. Also, I think, and as I was telling you before, I've had a number of guests on the show, which has really been, again, my own learning around understanding how things work, especially from the education lens in the North. And outside of what you've talked about in terms of climate, and it's a different part of the world, the geography and whatnot, education in the Northwest Territories is run differently than it is in the rest of Canada. Can you just give people a sense of how is education governed and looked after in the Northwest Territory that's not the same as the rest of Canada?
It varies. For example, there's lots of similarities, but lots of differences. So in the whole Northwest Territories, there's multiple school districts, but really there's only 3 kind of functioning organizations within it. So for example, there's Yellowknife Public Education District number 1. So that's 8 public schools just in Yellowknife. Then there's a Catholic system. So there's 3 schools in the Catholic system. And then the rest of the schools in the whole government, in the whole Northwest Territories, are considered run by the GWTs. So that's 3 groups, yet there's different districts in different areas. In Yellowknife, it runs similar that you would see down south. There's a board of trustees, superintendent, assistant superintendent, those kind of functions, and those bodies function similarly down south. Where if you go to some of the communities, it runs differently. Like the community actually has an actual education board where members of the community are involved with the school principal, and they function as we'll call it a mini board that helps run their school, because sometimes even within a school district, you have isolated communities. Not every community functions the same, or their goals are the same, or their educational goals are the same. So there's slight variations within that, and sometimes even slightly different calendars. In all of the Northwest Territories, we had followed the Alberta school curriculums with some adaptations along the way.
Right.
I know we also have an Indigenous lens from all the way up in particular to grade 9 with some Denica Day in particular, especially in our area. That is a key function that needs to be a part of all curriculum, all the way to, like I said, to grade 9, let alone also as you navigate 10, 11, 12, having that Indigenous lens from the community in which you live in is very crucial. But over the last 3 years, we've been transitioning to the BC type curriculum and away from the Alberta curriculum. So that's also been a slight bit of a change and challenge. But
yeah. And how, I would just be curious about that sort of transition in terms of uptick from parents, teachers, whomever. How's it going?
Generally, right off the bat, I'd say certainly from a staff and school perspective, they like the curriculum. In my experience here at the high school, it's certainly a smaller step. The curriculum content is very similar. The bigger change certainly at the high school is the assessment practices. And I would say the inclusion lens is certainly taking a deeper dive in comparison to the older curriculum. That's exciting. That's really, a good focus. It's the challenge with it certainly is the amount of work, effort, and time every individual teacher has to put in to transition, new materials and update. Not that teachers don't do that year to year, but it's
Right.
taking a much, much deeper dive when you're talking about major change in assessment practices, really bigger adjustments into, I'd say, more and more current practices in all courses. So making the schedule, teacher schedules themselves has been challenging, or kids that get caught in kind of two systems at the same time because the credit system is not the exact same.
Right.
It's certainly making it challenging. There's no doubt.
Right. The other thing that I don't fully understand in terms of a northern education experience is the role of the federal government. There is a role that the federal government does play that doesn't play at any provincial level. So can you maybe just share a little bit about that,
It has to
how
do,
that works?
yeah, a little bit of funding because it's the way in which you're able to support some of these schools in very isolated communities, very small schools. Yet, so there's extra funding that our territorial government gets from the federal government in order to make sure education can be local. So that's a big piece of it. Another big piece which has changed is Jordan's Principle funding, which supports Indigenous students and the needs there. A lot of school districts over the last number of years were able to access, with family support, funds that can help support getting staff into schools, because not every community has access to certain services, whether you're talking about speech, whether you're talking about educational assistance, whether you're talking about those types of things. So schools and districts were able to apply to Jordan's Principle with the family in order to access funding to be able to hire people, whether it's, a short term or whether it's for the semester or for the school year, in order to provide more service and supports for kids. And when the federal government really rolled back how those things were being approved, really has been challenging, honestly, over the last year, and more challenges to come, for sure. That's a big one. That was certainly a big hit to the territories in particular, and in some areas of Canada, because we don't, for
Right.
example, the big change was the funding, because you're not on reserves versus on reserves. There's not really reserves in the Northwest Territories. There just really isn't.
Interesting. Yeah. Thanks for that level overview. I think that gives people context. I want to talk a little bit more about you specifically. You look back at, so how long have you been principal at the high school there?
Oh, at this school, I have been at this school since 2011. I've been the principal since I was a VP for 4
Yep.
years, and then I've been the principal now for, this is year 11, I think. And then this is my fourth school in Yellowknife, and I've
Okay.
been the administrator of 3 of them.
All right. So just thinking about, your school specifically, I
Yep.
think maybe targeting, what would you say you're most proud of in the way your school operates and runs? And again, you laid out some of the challenges that exist in a northern community, and I'm sure some of the things you do help to address those kind of things. But what do you feel like you're most proud of?
I think most proud of is probably the staff. Like, I really think our staff, that the quality level of education that kids get in our classrooms is top notch. I have staff that are literally from all over the country.
Yes.
I probably have at least a third of the staff that are true Northerners, born, raised, went to school in the system, whether directly here or another place in the North. I have another third that have only ever taught in the Northwest Territories. Their whole teaching career has been here. And then I got probably another third, they're, like I said, from that very diverse area across the country, and they bring their expertise here. So honestly, I know navigating these two systems as once is stressful is certainly the staff. It's a lot of work. But I have to say, that's probably the biggest thing that I'm super proud of, is this school, and the education and opportunities our kids get is top notch. We are just in a real good spot to get PD, get support for that people are very motivated to do an incredible job in every classroom. Not that they don't in every school in the country,
Sure.
I'm sure. But honestly, that's probably the proudest thing of the school, is that our staff is top notch, honestly.
So you described these 3/3, if you
Yep.
will, the long time
Yep.
born and raised, the teachers or settled in as northern teachers, and then this third component. I'm interested about
Yep.
that third component in terms of recruitment, retention, how that compares potentially to, because I know that's always a challenge because people don't know what they're getting into necessarily. There's a job like, and it, probably pays a little bit more. So
Yep.
there's some advantage to it, but they're also not everybody's ready to live in the North. But you also have that other third who were from the South, came, and they're locked in. So I'm curious about that other third in terms of recruitment and retention. the ways in which you help them. Everybody's going to be different. And for some people, they're just going to decide this just isn't for me. And that's just the way it is.
And that's okay. That happens everywhere and anywhere for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I think.
So how do you navigate those new people in terms of that recruitment retention? Like, how do you help them find their way, I guess?
For me, and again, been here a long time, there's a bit of process. I'm very open and honest, even as early as the interview process is ask particular questions in the interview. Why would you want this adventure to move from whatever, the big city to coming to this community? Do they know something about our community? Do they know something about the Northwest Territories? Do they have a relative in town? We ask particular questions just to make sure that if they're saying yes to our job, their eyes are open, because they need to be open and honest and have an understanding of what they would come into. And that's not saying they'd still be perfect. Asking about what their hobbies are and routines, asking those kind of personal things without getting too personal. But then on the flip side, when they're getting here, finding out, where they're living, do they need furniture? Do they need supports like that? Letting them know what's in town in their area. Even looking at a mentorship program, making sure they're linked with either someone within their department in school or a mentor, let's say someone their age. Maybe in particular, let's say that person I linked them up with is a local or has gone through the high school here themselves, those kinds of things to help with that transition.
Sure.
Those are some strategies that we use right off the bat. And you hope that third that is section, invests in it and stays in it and sees the great things, because it's like you mentioned, it does get lots of perks. There's a little more pay. You can fly in and out of our city every single day to Edmonton, Vancouver, and Calgary. Even though you think it's far away, in reality for the Northerners, it's not. We have 2 weeks March break, not 1 week in March. Little incentives, great funding for professional development. If you're looking to really challenge yourself, there's opportunity to get funding to support your further education if you were looking at a master's degree. There's lots of things like that aren't necessarily available right off the bat in some southern communities.
And again, the other big part of that, and again, for those specifically for that third of group who have been there for a while and have said, yes, this is home, this is where I live, they've embraced the northern lifestyle. I'm sure that to some degree, like this is, I can navigate these long, dark winters, and I fully take advantage of the amazing summers and sunlight that you have. And I'm sure, again, the degree to which this isn't just about a new place, but about navigating a very different lifestyle is a big part of that, getting locked in, right? And again, for some, it's just like, I can't do it, but others are like,
Because you will have staff that are struggling with it, and you pick up on it, and you help them try to navigate to the point of getting to the end of the school year, letting them know, focus on their professionalism and their work in school, and whether it's getting a reference from myself or one of our VPs. Each of us, and I've been lucky enough, my admin team, like I said, I've been here for 34 years. One of my vice principals went to high school here, graduated here, and has only ever taught here. My other VP has only ever taught here for the last 14 years. Came from Ontario. Having staff connect, especially the struggling with one of us, help support them and navigate whatever the next steps are, whether it's, they need to go somewhere else or they just need some guidance in how they can invest in our community.
So this show is always, I like thinking about the challenges that people face in leadership, because, we're going to talk a little bit about your role in CAPS and so forth, and that's one aspect of it. And so obviously that speaks to the fact that you've had some success and being that tenure, that's great. And you've also even in our short conversation, I get this, positive energy that you're bringing to me, which is a big part of the job. But anybody that's ever been in leadership knows, it's not always great. There's always these challenges you have to navigate. And I'm always curious about a challenge that you might have faced that even if you didn't handle it perfectly, or I could have, looking back, we always in hindsight could have dealt with it differently, but it taught you something. That was a really good lesson for me, and it's helped me in the next phase of things. So however you want to pull from your experience, I'd love to hear about a leadership challenge and how you navigated that.
Probably is certainly, I could talk about COVID. I could talk about a city evacuation. There's a lot. Probably the biggest challenge that you're going to always, in my mind, re-examine is our transition from, one curriculum to the other, and how we had to have two systems at once. And we had to, and part of it is not it's not like it's a choice or an option of how you navigate, say, the teacher assignment, the overall school schedule, or what's offered or not offered to the kids. Because, our school being 668, there's going to be limitations to what we can offer. Our courses aren't available every day, every period of the day. So we've had to make adjustments over certainly the last 3 years in particular. And, I always think about some of the things that would I rethink it? Should have had more consultation, for example, with the staff or with students or with parents to some degree. We adjusted the periods of the day. So we went from 4 periods of day, which were 85 minutes, to having it 5 periods a day for 68 minutes for 2 main reasons. One would be it's a better teaching time. That 68 minutes is a little bit better than the 85 was long for kids. For a large chunk of our kids, that 85 minutes is a long period of time. But with it, having that extra period, they helped a lot of kids who are caught in, say, with their credits in 2 different systems so they could get straightened out. It also helped some of those kids who needed to retake courses, for example. And it certainly made it available if you were an old system kid, you were able to take a new course, and then the guidance counselor helped switch over those credits. So I knew why we needed to do it. Probably if I would do it all over again, I probably would have, instead of made that executive decision, which is, had to do it, but probably had more consultation. So people felt they had more voice.
Sure.
They had a little bit, but I think I probably would have played it out because the buy-in it's good. They all understand. I just think as staff and students, having their voice would have probably navigated that tricky waters a little easier. But some of those decisions, and staff know, or sometimes they know, it's not necessarily a choice or an option. It's we have to do it. Let's come up with the best way to do it. I probably would have played that over again. But it's one of those things.
Right.
You can't I can't stay up at night thinking about it anymore. You got to move on.
Yeah, I think that's always, even as whether you're a classroom teacher or a principal or a school leader of any kind, when you think about the sheer number of decisions that you actually make in a day, it is overwhelming. And to second guess every single decision. And again, that one I probably would have done differently. It still has value in reflecting on, okay, that was a good one that I think I would just change that a little bit. And to your point, we all know that the more consultation you have, the more buy-in you have, but also that takes longer.
Time.
Like there's a trade-off there, right? So you're always trying to navigate, is this the one that's worth investing in collaborative approach? And, again, you've obviously made a decision that I think probably would have done that a little bit more.
Because you're always going to have a group that are going to say, hey, Dean, just make the decision for us. I have enough on my plate as a teacher. Then you're going to have a section, hey, how come you didn't ask me?
Oh, man.
So it's a balancing act. But again, I totally understand. So we tried to, even as we made some changes along further after the schedule change, just trying to consultate with those groups a little more.
Yeah.
Even though we knew what road we were going to probably have to travel.
Next question I have, and I think about, you mentioned already, you've got a couple of VPs, one that's, homegrown, one that's, been part of your school for a while. And I think about legacy, and I think about the future of education. And you're 34 years in. I don't want to project, but I don't know you're going to be doing this for another 10 years.
No. The finish line is real close. The start line's quite a bit behind me.
At the same time, I think, whether it's you individually, but systemically, we know we need more leaders in this position. We need people to step up and to take on some of these roles and challenges. And with 34 years of experience, I wonder what kind of advice you're going to give. If you're all right now, maybe there's teachers in your building right now who you either have called out or even in your own mind saying, that person, I think they would do well. They should be thinking about this. What kind of advice do you give them to get them? I'm thinking of people in the early phases of this.
Yep.
Maybe they haven't decided, I definitely want to be a principal or a school leader, but you have identified qualities in them. Like, what kind of advice do you give them to help them in that trajectory?
Yeah, that's an excellent thing. That's something that's always on my mind. The number of thinking, when I leave or some admin jobs are open and people aren't applying. Right. So we as principals have to take responsibility for that. We have to invest some of the staff. So honestly, what I try to do is I see some of these skills and I'd say talents in certain individuals naturally. I try to get them to take on something like a quick win, I call it. So they take on an event or they take on an activity of some sort that's beyond their classroom. It's on a bit of a
Right.
bigger scope. And I invest and empower them to take it over, to run it, to organize it, to experience it with a group, and be leading a group of people, both staff and students, in order to make this event occur. And tell them, walk me through it. Tell me your idea. Let's take it to the next level. So then we are able to experience it. Then once it's over, that's probably the biggest learning curve that I tell some of the staff that are looking to take these things. I said, you need to sit down once it's over and you need to debrief with yourself. You need to say, hey, what went really well that I loved? What was just okay? And what would I change? And then taking that experience and then try to build upon it. So if it's something that would reoccur, let's say yearly or semesters or whatever it may be, and try to get that staff member to see it, because let's be pretty honest, leadership roles, you need to have a healthy confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have naysayers, you're going to have the doubters, you're going to have some people that are not, let's say, going to invest in your passion or your idea. So you have to have that confidence in yourself. This is the right thing to do for the kids, for the school, the community, whatever it may be. You have to really do that. And if I certainly see that process happening or invest and empower someone, I probably want to try to mentor them, either whether it's myself or one of our VPs or even some of our department heads in our building, to also mentor and work with them so they get more confident, because it's not something that just lands in your lap. It's one thing to have a great idea. It's another thing to make it work really well for, a school of 700. If you do that quick win and that confidence building in staff, can really inspire someone to want to lead.
Sure.
Right? Because the challenge that I see on it, and to be very honest, Dean, when I retire, I'm not sure how many people are going to want to apply for this job. And that concerns me. And I feel
Yes.
responsible for some of that. We as administrators, and I say this to the CAP people all the time, we need to do a better job of showing the great things about our job, because staff see the other things.
Yes. I want to pick up on that, because that is something I have been thinking about and I've read about, written about, and talked about for a while. I just actually finished an interview with somebody that'll post later who specifically talked about her awareness of, so I asked her the same question I asked you.
Yep.
And she talked about somebody that, and then the person responded by saying, I don't want your job. And she was worried, and she thought about, maybe I'm not projecting this job in the positive way.
Yep.
And she said, which she said felt bad, because she said, I loved my job.
Yep.
I really do
Yep.
like it. But how do they know that you like your job? I get the sense, again, Dean, you and I don't
Yep.
know each other
Yep.
that well, but even from this,
Yep.
Dean looks like he's comfortable in his job.
Yep.
He's got nice hockey photos in the background. Like,
Yep.
it looks like so how do you make people say, I want your job, Dean?
Yep.
Dean looks like he's having fun. So have you thought of things that you're doing beyond giving advice to people is one thing, but just
Yep.
like, how do you make yourself look like you're enjoying your job?
You to me, my strategy is you need to literally show them. Like for me, I know you got to get out in the hallway. You got to be talking to kids. You have to be out there dropping into classes and just talking to the people in the room. You have to turn around and see that side. Too many times the staff see you working with a difficult parent, you suspending a student,
Sure.
you working with some staff to get them to where they need to be. Like they hear and know about those things. They see a staff meeting and they like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't want to stand there, or an assembly.
Right.
Versus I try to really do a lot of modeling in the hallways, at assemblies, with kids, both in serious conversations and in the kind of the relaxed conversations. Like sometimes even when we're dealing with discipline things, I'll do it with the staff member in front of me. Because at the end of the day, talking to the administrator shouldn't always feel like it's a bad thing. Me correcting and redirecting a kid isn't a bad thing. And trying to show them that if you, my theory is always, if you know the kid, you know a nugget about the kid's going to respect you no matter what occurs. But tomorrow's also a new day. And we talk about some of those things. I try to show that side, but I'm not going to be very honest, certainly since 2020, that aspect of my job has become a lot more challenging. If you had asked me 10 years ago, about other people, about staff seeing the great things about my job, I think it would be a little more obvious. It's for me as an administrator, since I got to think about it now, 2003, certainly in the last 5 years have been much different than the previous.
Yeah, it's a good call out. And I think you would have everybody nodding their head saying, yeah, I've experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
And yet I think it all of that, I think, makes this question even more important, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we overcome the obvious fact that people are going like, he has to deal with that, and then he has to deal with that. I don't want anything to do with that. And I think it is more of an important conversation than it would have been 5 years ago to say, because I need people to see, yeah, there's a lot of challenges with this job, and parts of the job is, yeah, I wish I didn't have to do this and this. Sure.
Yeah.
But on the other side,
Oh,
I get to do this and this, and that
Exactly.
far outweighs those things. And so, first of all, you have to believe it's
Yeah,
true in your
absolutely.
own world. And then the next part is, how do I make other people see what I feel, right?
Yeah,
That's-
you really
that's
got
not
to,
easy.
it's lots of communication with the whole staff,
Sure.
even the people you don't see stepping up. But they also, too, if they pick up the vibe from you as the leader, that things are much more the glass is half full,
That's right.
not half
That's right.
empty. Then in reality, that becomes contagious. So even in the
That's right.
difficult moments, they can
Yeah.
still see the good side.
Yeah.
They can still see that, you know what, we're dealing with something unexpected, but we can still navigate it. Right?
And and that's something that I think, some would say you can't fake it. And that's, you can put on a face,
Yeah.
but here's the thing, over time, your authenticity will supersede that. So
Yes.
even if during those times you were putting on a bit of a brave face, if you will, that's okay to do in part, because over time they'll see that, yeah, I realize that wasn't a great thing that he had to do, but instead of woe is me and the sky is falling,
Yeah.
and people don't need that
No.
in their life. And it's this balance between, we don't want toxic positivity where we ignore the challenges
Yeah.
that are there.
Yep. You got to be honest.
But we're, like, I love you said, we're transparent. Here's the challenge. We're going to have to deal with this one, but we're going to get through it. And when we do, we'll shift to the things that are more, positive.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's a real sort of global societal challenge, not just a school challenge
No.
that we're facing right now. I think we're having an opportunity to mirror a little bit. Here's how we can navigate. If we can figure this out at the school level, maybe beyond that, we can take some of this stuff.
No, there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Last question, then we're going to talk a little bit about CAPS in a moment, but I want you to I like people to show their gratitude, finding one person. And again, people don't like this question because they say, oh, it's more than one. There's so many people. Yeah, of course there is. Of course there is. If you're any kind of a good student, leader, whatever, you've had multiple people who have positively impacted your life. But I want you today just to find one person that you want to just give a shout out to, that's saying, this person was really somebody that I value and appreciate in my own professional growth.
For me, professionally speaking, absolutely. I would say in my first 10 years of teaching, I got exposed to an admin team that they inspired me to be a leader and take on more. Maybe that's why the philosophy I have is what it is. I'd say it was a combination. Marion Barnes was the school principal at Mildred Hall with Bill Strain as the vice principal. Those two people really invested in me before I even realized that I had some of these skills. They saw it, they told me, they pointed it out. And then they invested in me. I can't sit here and say exactly why. They were great. They became mentors to me, and I didn't even know how that worked way back then.
Sure.
They really influenced me. Marion was one, get out into the hallways, Dean. Use your personality to reach kids. Bill was like, show the fun side of you, but yet be serious when you need to be serious. Like those two individuals made a huge impact on how I administrate today. And that was like, oh my gosh, 1998 or something.
Yeah. I think that speaks to, the previous question I asked you about how do you help those 25-year-olds, is that the impact that those people had in your early days, that has a big impact, right? It's a little bit of a parallel to child development, is that the early years are the big years in terms of that's going to shape who you are. And as a professional, those early years, the people that have done those kind of things for you really help shape you. It's awesome to have that, those kind of people in your life.
No, absolutely.
All right, we want to shift a little bit to talking about CAP. So you're like a big deal. You're like a president.
I am the CAP president, since July.
But you have been, CAPS is not obviously a new organization. No. So just give a little bit of, because the other thing that I think is fascinating about CAPS is that it's one of these very few organizations that is not provincially based.
Yep.
It is Canada-wide. So just give folks a sense of kind of what CAPS is and why it's an important part of your professional world.
Oh yeah. So the Canadian Association of Principals is around actually in 2027 to be 50 years actually. It's an organization that the provinces and territories have their leadership group. Like for example, the Northwest Territories, we have the Northwest Territories School Administrators Council. So all of our 43 schools and our 82 administrators across the territories meet on a regular basis. And from our group, we have a representative that sits at the CAP table, so on a national level. So the CAP is an organization that brings together people from across the country that share kind of goals and targets within our areas and tackle some of the certainly challenges that we've been talking about today: recruitment, retention, parent engagement, staff wellness, personal wellness, the lack of people applying at administrative jobs, and finding out certainly at the CAP table that if you are in Yellowknife, or you're in Lethbridge, or you're in St. John's, Newfoundland, or you're in Bathurst, New Brunswick, or Toronto, Ontario, we're all dealing with the same thing. So it brings that commonality that is, we have far more things in common than we have differently. Doesn't matter where you live in this country. It does not. And so that's what CAP does, and it brings together anybody who's an administrator in the country can be a member of CAP. If you're directly connected with any of the affiliates, like in your province or territory, you're automatically a member and you have access to cheaper rate in the conference and such like that. I've been a part of the CAP organization. I first got introduced to it in 2017. I've been sitting on the board since 2020. And last year I was the president-elect, was lucky enough to work with Carol Sarge, who is from Saskatoon. And she'd been on the CAP board since, oh my gosh, like 2010 or something, or 2011. She was the president and now past president. And I've been working with her just to transition to the presidency. Our goal as a whole organization is to bring together and build relationships with administrators in all these affiliates to emphasize that there's a lot more in common than different, and build our network and our bringing a voice to the national table and even beyond. It's something that even across the globe, and I was lucky enough, Dean, to attend the European School Heads Association conference and meetings in Rome, Italy, back in the end of October. And one of the first guest speakers stood on stage, and we're in a room of near 700 administrators from across Europe, along with Australia, actually, Canada, and a few other places in the world. And the first speaker, Dr. Zachary Walker, steps on stage and talks about the biggest challenges to administrators. I think half the room just laughed because it was recruitment and retention of staff. It was wellness. It was talking about parent engagement. It was talking about lack of interest in administrative jobs. It was nothing new. It brought such a calmness to the room because then it sets the tone for the conference and any other session. That's all I talked to. I would be sitting there and I'm sitting beside, a gentleman from Iceland on one side of me, a lady from the Netherlands, and someone from Denmark, and we're all dealing with the same challenge. So sharing that really, CAP is one of those things, like bringing together those commonalities so we can have those open conversations, because our job can be isolating. Our job can sometimes get that sense of feeling alone. And as I mentioned before, you have to have confidence in it. You build confidence by building relationships and connection, like even the territories. When we run our affiliate meetings, we run 4 a year. 3 of them are online for sure. And sometimes, in some years, we're lucky enough to come together in person, but not necessarily. So creating that environment so people can reach out and can connect. So that's a big piece for CAP.
Yeah. I think maybe it goes without saying, but I hope people continue to realize, like, a couple things in my experience and I think the research bears it out, that principals I always refer to them, they're the linchpin of success in your school district. If you do not have good, strong principals, it doesn't matter how great your vision is. It doesn't even matter how great your teachers are.
No.
If they aren't kind of leading this, you're hooped. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that is critical. And then your second point about the loneliness of the job, that has been, ever since I left my school district, 12, 13 years ago and started working more broadly, I began to notice that the principals are kind of the left out
Yeah.
often left out because there's lots of professional learning focused on teachers.
Oh,
Like
yes.
there's their support there.
Mhm.
And our district level leaders have the time and the structure as well to think at the high level. So they're good. And oftentimes principals are because they don't really know where am I
Yeah.
in this? I'm in this middle kind of position. And I've had a couple interviews on this show, one with Paul Corrigan from Elk Island Catholic
Yep.
in outside of Edmonton,
Mhm.
who did a survey and found out in his school district that the principals represented the loneliest group in like they were more lonely than were teachers or any other. So that was
Yep.
his aha moment is how do
Yeah.
we combat that? How do we create more of a community effort? And I know probably my very first guest on the show, Dr. Cameron Hausman from the University of Manitoba, has done so much research
Yeah.
around principles, finding out the same thing, that the level of like things like dependency on alcohol and other things is
Yeah.
higher in principles than it is in
Oh,
the
yeah.
rest of the thing. So all of this to say, the work you're doing is critical and important.
Yep.
And so all of my little speech there was I want to ask you a question in terms of your goal and mission is to bring these people together and help
Yep.
them connect beyond that. Do you have any kind of stories, examples of what that's looked like in terms of a collaboration, a connection, and a support that CAPS has been able to directly or indirectly facilitate that's helped people from different provinces, particularly because that's the really neat thing is that they can jump across borders to connect with people and support them.
We try, it's certainly a kind of twofold. So at the CAP table, part of our agendas when we do meet in person, which is usually twice a year, is bringing together and getting the affiliate directors or the chairperson or president of their affiliate to share kind of their positives, but their challenge. And in trying to have those discussions, okay, as a group, that challenge that they're dealing with in Newfoundland, how do people see it, and giving feedback and connection with it, and trying to give ideas and feedback is a great thing. I think for the Northwest Territories is really for us, because everybody is isolated, trying to make sure that reaching out is support, because it's too easy. It is too easy to automatically feel by yourself. It is too, especially if you're in a, not only in a, you're the only principal in the building, you might be the only principal in the town. The town is not very big and your staff isn't very large itself. You could be talking a handful of staff and that's it. So understanding that network and partnerships are so important to reaching out. So we've been lucky enough, I know, working with some of the particular affiliates and trying to show how some organizations function. So for example, I'll speak about the Northwest Territories, trying to share with the Nunavut Teachers Association and their administrators in their union and in the Yukon, trying to work with, here's how we run our system. It's not perfect, but here's how we've tried to build connection so people aren't feeling so isolated on their own. And trying to trying to have conversations with those particular groups to try to work around that, because it happens easily. It really does. And it happens a lot there's isolated communities in northern Manitoba. I know that Chris Hicks, who is the president of their School Leaders Association, they traveled with the union leader, president, around the whole province, going to schools and talking to administrators and trying to build that bridge so isolation is a little further away. Trying to work with groups like that so they're not on their own, because it's trying to build those connections is so important, so important.
Yeah. And again, none of us have it all figured out, but
No.
collectively we can learn with and from each other. So
Yeah.
appreciate that. All right. Give us some specifics around this year's conference and people that are listening that may think, hey, is this something I should participate in? So this is like your plug moment right here.
So I'll plug the next two CAP conferences.
Good, yeah.
This one coming up this year in 2026 is in Regina, Saskatchewan. Great organizing committee. It's going on Tuesday, May 5th, which is the pre-conference. And then the conference goes the 6th, 7th, and the 8th. You're done around lunchtime. It's usually kind of the same type of format that runs all the time. Whether you participate in the pre-conference, you don't have to, but you can certainly do the conference. Saskatchewan is a very strong supporter, certainly of CAP, and really trying to promote it. It's a great scenario. The CAP conference is a great setup because you got a keynote and then breakout sessions at each part of the day. So breakout sessions are a huge piece of what we do at CAP. That's something important. It's great to have that, guest speaker walk on stage and do that, but we also always have our guest speakers do breakout sessions, along with getting administrators in Canada to offer sessions. Practical, real experiences that they can go to a session put on by Dean and walk away with an idea, walk away with something. That's really something we really try to promote. We try to really have an Indigenous focus. We try to make sure we have a French language focus in each and every conference. Those are big pieces for us. Along with, it's the CAP conference is run by the affiliates. So Saskatchewan is running it. Yet the CAP board of directors and those members are still very much out there and trying to support and trying to make sure that those things are happening. We also have the work of CAP 2027, which is in Moncton, New Brunswick, and that's happening April 27th to April 30th. Monktons are very excited because it's been a long time since they hosted a CAP conference. And in 2027 is the 50th anniversary of CAP. The goal there certainly is to recognize past presidents, people who've been involved in CAP, sending out invitations to have some of those people have an opportunity to attend. It's going to have some events where, we're going to have, tell some stories from the past, getting members to recognize the importance of CAP and where it's come from and why, and the story behind it, into where we are today. And hopefully, again, having those important keynotes, but yet those really cool, practical breakout sessions that people feel really connected to, that make a great opportunity. And getting members to be wanting to submit about sharing a success at their school or their school district. That's something that we try to really focus on in CAP. So it's an experience. It's not just a conference, it's an experience.
Excellent. Yeah. And I think I took a quick peek. I think two of the keynotes, Katie White and Alec Koros, are both friends of mine. I've had them on the show. You can watch their podcast to know a little bit more about them. And I think Joe Sanfilippo, Joe's a good friend of mine too. So just a great lineup. And again, that mix of here's a few people coming to share at that level, but also we've got some local practical things that this is that's such a great mix. So encourage people to attend that one. All right. I got 3 quick questions to get you out of here. I can see the sun is actually coming up.
Yes, it's actually
behind you.
Yeah, it's 10 after 10. So just in time for the elementary school's outdoor recess. If it's not that cold, they try to do it now where it's a little light. It's a little tricky in the dark on the playground.
That's right. Okay, so what do you got anything on the bookshelf that you're reading and or listening to right now from a professional level?
Professional level, I would say. So I read in particular, I read it a little while ago, was Simon Breakspear's. Simon's a friend of mine. He wrote The Pruning Principle. It's a little bit funny. He was a guest speaker of one of our CAP conferences that we ran in Toronto in 2023. And just Simon and I formed a relationship from then. And I read it a while ago, but it's like taking that book now, putting it to practice. It's challenging. So he pushes you. That was one thing. George Kyrgios's last book there, or not the latest one, which was just What Makes a Great Principle, reading that one. Well, I'd say the other thing I started listening to, because over Christmas, I happened to be I was watching CNN and they were interviewing, his name has slipped my mind, the guy who wrote The Anxious Generation, Jonathan.
Oh, Jonathan Haidt.
Haidt, yeah, thank you. He was doing an interview and it was such a good interview. I started trying to just research it and read more about it because he referenced the anxious generation should be the amazing generation. And what do we have to do to make that bridge happen for those kids? It was really, anyway, cool. I got to take a deeper dive into that one for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned watching a lot of hockey. We probably, disappointingly, like a lot of us, didn't get our World Juniors to quite come through for us the way we wanted to. So maybe that was it. But as far as watching and guilty pleasures, if you will, what do you binge or like to watch? Maybe hockey and beyond too, but.
I watch every level of hockey. That's my go-to. It just gets me out of the work mode into certainly a pleasure mode. So I'm a huge Toronto Maple Leaf fan for whatever reason.
Wow.
It's a long story. But, being out west, I watch a ton of the Oilers, a ton of the Flames in particular. I watch junior hockey. Like I mentioned earlier, I watch and try to pick up where the young kids from Yellowknife are playing down south. Those are some big things that I do. I play hockey myself, which is great. Although, of course, over Christmas, I have 2 daughters in their mid-20s and early 20s. I had to partake in the Taylor Swift Eras Tour documentary.
Okay. There you go.
Except before you commit to it, Dean, just a heads up, it's very long. It's very long. Impressive. Don't get me wrong, but
Yes.
very long.
Yes, yeah, that's interesting. Both, I think, all three of my daughters went to Toronto.
Yeah.
Was it last year or whatever? Watched the concerts, and I have to. It was a superintendent friend of mine who went with his daughter and
Yeah.
wife as well.
Yeah.
And he did make the comment that says it is actually impressive
It is.
the degree to which she connects with her
Oh.
audience.
Mhm.
Right, there is something
Yep.
like there's a lesson to be learned in terms of leadership and
Yep.
community and like how does that work, right? So there's
Yep. And she can
even if we're not all in as Swifties, if
Yeah.
you will, there's certainly things to learn from those.
I have to say,
yeah.
to be very upfront, very impressive. You're on stage by yourself, little isolation by like a principal, and you're reaching that many people in that
Yeah.
moment. It's impressive. There's no doubt.
Yeah. All right. Again, you're I think the third person that I've interviewed from Yellowknife specifically.
Yeah.
And I end up with this question is what would be perhaps a hidden gem in Yellowknife?
Yeah.
Truth be known,
Yeah.
I've been invited to come speak at your teachers conference in February.
Oh yeah. Okay. Great.
So that will be my first official
Well,
time.
definitely.
in
You
Yellowknife.
could be speaking in my school. It'll either be
Okay.
here or the one across the street.
Okay, so you and I hopefully will connect
Yeah.
then, but I want to know beyond just maybe the obvious things.
Yep.
Give me something, a bit of a local hidden gem kind of thing that people may not know about this, but this would be an interesting thing to check out. What would that be?
So if you can in the winter, certainly the obvious is you can go on the dog sled rides for sure out in Cam Lake at one end of town. Some people know, certainly all the locals and northerners know about the snow castle, but some people from down south don't. We have a snow castle
Okay.
built every year, and it is massive to the point where there's
I wanna see it.
shows at night. There are activities during the day. That's pretty impressive. We have some,
Okay.
we have some caves you can search out, and it's the ice caves that kids call it, and it's really neat. In the summer, if you drive the Ingham Trail just to get outside the city, like literally 10 minutes away, you can be hiking and camping and fishing at any lake. There's so many lakes along the road. Just to go out there, recharge the batteries before you come back in. That's also something a lot of the locals do.
All right. I appreciate all of this. It's a great conversation. So glad that you said yes and
Yeah, no
came to
problem.
share a little bit of your story, a little bit what's happening with CAPS, getting to know a little bit more about education in the North. I think this is a great conversation. So thanks so much, Dean. And I hope we connect again, keep going here. A couple of Deans.
Correct.
Can't go too far wrong here.
No, that's right. Absolutely. Hopefully I see you in February.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Really nice meeting you, Matt.
Absolutely.